When the announcement was made that Red Bull would build its own power unit for the 2026 Formula One regulations, the paddock reacted with a mixture of admiration and skepticism. On one hand, the idea of an independent constructor like Red Bull, already so dominant in chassis development, taking the bold step to create its own engine seemed like the logical next chapter in a story of ambition. On the other, the whispers began almost immediately. Producing a Formula One engine is no small feat, especially under a new regulatory framework that will completely reset the balance of power in the sport. And as the calendar ticks closer to the dawn of this new era, the growing narrative inside and outside the paddock is that Red Bull's 2026 engine project might be underpowered, that the audacity of building an in-house power unit could turn into a liability, and that the dominance of the Verstappen era may be under threat just as the sport enters another cycle of technical change. The 2026 regulations are designed to increase electrical power, reduce reliance on the internal combustion unit, and make hybrid systems the centerpiece of Formula One engines. For manufacturers with years of experience in hybrid technology like Mercedes, Ferrari, and Renault, the transition, while still difficult, rests on solid foundations. Audi's entry is another wild card, bringing the massive technological expertise of the Volkswagen Group to the table. Red Bull, by contrast, finds itself in a paradoxical position. It has partnered with Ford for branding and some technical support, but the reality is that the power unit will be designed and developed primarily by Red Bull Powertrains in Milton Keynes, a facility that, despite its state-of-the-art resources, is still learning the unique complexities of F1 engine development. Rumors from inside the industry suggest that Red Bull's power unit is struggling with energy deployment, reliability, and weight distribution, three areas that are absolutely critical under the upcoming regulations. The concern is not that the car won't run, but that it won't match the sheer efficiency and balance that more seasoned manufacturers are expected to deliver. For Max Verstappen and his camp, this growing uncertainty is more than just noise. Verstappen has thrived in the current era of Red Bull-Honda partnership, winning championships with an engine that has been not only powerful but also consistent. The Honda power unit, though officially detached from Red Bull after 2025, still carries the imprint of Japanese engineering excellence that has been refined through decades. To replace that with something unproven is a gamble that even a driver of Verstappen's caliber cannot fully neutralize. And the whispers in the paddock are starting to spread. Verstappen, so accustomed to dominating, may find himself in a machine that cannot deliver the same edge, a car fast on the straights and balanced in the corners but constantly handicapped by the inability to deploy its electrical energy as efficiently as its rivals. In Formula One, where fractions of a second are everything, the smallest deficit in power translates into an unbridgeable gap over the course of a season. The issue becomes even more dramatic when one considers Red Bull's recent history of dominance. The team has built a reputation for extracting aerodynamic genius from the mind of Adrian Newey, for mastering setups, and for operating as the most complete package on the grid. But the foundation of that dominance has always been the balance between car and engine. With Honda support, Red Bull could afford to build its cars aggressively, knowing the power unit would deliver the necessary output. Now, as reports filter through the paddock about dyno tests and preliminary simulations, the story is that Red Bull's new power unit is producing less power than expected, and more worryingly, that it suffers from efficiency issues which are not easily solved in the short term. The hybrid deployment curve, the way energy is harvested and redeployed through braking and acceleration, appears to be the Achilles heel. If true, Red Bull would find itself entering the 2026 season at a disadvantage, a position it has not known since before the hybrid era began in 2014. Fernando Alonso, Lewis Hamilton, and other veterans of the grid know all too well what it means to be caught on the wrong side of an engine regulation reset. Mercedes built its dynasty on being ahead of the curve when hybrid power units were introduced. Ferrari had years of struggle before finding parity. Renault, once a powerhouse, faded into mediocrity under the weight of its underperforming engines. Now, Red Bull risks falling into the same trap. The narrative around the paddock is that Red Bull's confidence may have bordered on arrogance, underestimating the sheer difficulty of matching manufacturers who have entire departments and decades of expertise devoted solely to engine technology. While the Milton Keynes operation is formidable, the complexity of integrating energy recovery systems, battery management, and turbo efficiency is not something that can be mastered overnight, no matter the resources. The psychological effect of these rumors is another element that cannot be ignored. Rivals smell blood in the water. Mercedes, still hungry to return to the top, views Red Bull's potential stumble as the perfect opportunity to reassert dominance. Ferrari, desperate for a new era of success, believes the balance of power could shift in their favor. Even Audi, new to the game, senses that Red Bull's inexperience in the engine department could allow them to leapfrog into contention more quickly than anticipated. In Formula One, perception is often as important as performance. If Red Bull enters the 2026 season with doubts about its power unit, it risks not only losing races but also losing the aura of invincibility it has cultivated. Once a team is perceived as vulnerable, the pressure multiplies, sponsors grow restless, and even the most loyal drivers start looking at the horizon for alternatives. The most pressing question is what happens to Verstappen. His contract ties him to Red Bull, but every contract has clauses, and every driver has a limit to how much frustration they are willing to endure. The Dutchman is at the peak of his powers, a driver who has redefined consistency and speed in the modern era. If the Red Bull engine truly underperforms, how long before whispers of him considering a move to Mercedes or Ferrari grow louder? For now, Verstappen remains committed, but Formula One history is littered with examples of drivers who abandoned ship when the machinery failed them. Alonso left McLaren, Hamilton left McLaren, Sebastian Vettel left Red Bull itself when performance waned. To imagine Verstappen facing midfield struggles with a weak power unit is almost unthinkable, yet this is the scenario some insiders suggest may be unfolding. From Red Bull's perspective, there is still time. Engine development is ongoing, and the resources being poured into Milton Keynes are immense. Ford's involvement, while limited in terms of direct engineering, brings credibility and some technological support. But time is a cruel opponent. Every week that passes without solutions to the reported deficiencies is a week lost against rivals who are accelerating their own programs. And in Formula One, the gap created at the start of a regulation cycle can last for years. Just as Mercedes built a dynasty from its early hybrid advantage, Red Bull risks building a decade of frustration if its power unit stumbles out of the gate in 2026. The irony is that Red Bull, so dominant today, may soon find itself chasing shadows, undone not by rivals' brilliance but by the burden of its own ambition. For the fans, the narrative is tantalizing. A weakened Red Bull could mean the end of Verstappen's domination, the rebirth of old rivalries, and the return of unpredictability to the sport. But for Red Bull itself, it is a nightmare scenario, one that threatens to undo years of strategic brilliance. The team took a gamble, betting that independence from external manufacturers would grant it control and long-term stability. Now, the fear is that this gamble will cost them everything: championships, prestige, and perhaps even the loyalty of the man who has carried them to unprecedented heights. In the end, the truth will only be revealed when the lights go out in 2026. Until then, the rumors will swirl, the dyno numbers will be whispered, and the pressure will mount on Red Bull powertrains. If the engine is weak, the consequences will be brutal and immediate. If it surprises the skeptics and proves competitive, Red Bull will be hailed once again as a visionary team capable of rewriting the rules. But for now, the story that dominates the paddock is one of doubt, of concern, and of a looming storm that threatens to shatter the empire Red Bull has so carefully built. And as always in Formula One, empires fall not with a bang but with the quiet failure of machinery that cannot keep pace with the relentless demands of the future.